Good day, and on behalf of the Bureau of Justice Assistance, let me welcome you to the Body-Worn Camera Technical Assistance webinar on prosecutor review of body-worn cameras for evidentiary concerns and ways that prosecutors manage digital evidence. As Quinn said, my name is Damon Mosler, and I work for CNA as a subject matter expert for the past 7 years related to body-worn camera development concerns and use of body-worn camera videos by district attorneys' offices. Today, we will hear from several practitioners with expertise in this arena. Andrew Ritland is the elected prosecutor for Mahaska, Iowa, a very small office in Iowa. Karen Cook works for Shelby County District Attorney's Office in Memphis, Tennessee. And finally, Amy Talixon works in Orange County District Attorney's Office in California. Each of these offices is a different size and will give us different insight as to how they handle the body-worn cameras, videos that they get, what they do with them, and then how they manage their digital evidence needs. I think by listening to them, you'll have an idea of different things that may impact your jurisdiction and things that you want to take away from that. I do encourage everybody to ask questions. I think this is a vibrant area. We started off with getting cameras for law enforcement partners. Then we were trying to learn how the videos actually got to the DA's offices. Now we're well beyond that in terms of effective use of the videos in charging decisions, courtroom presentations, and finally, how we're going to manage the data that comes with all those videos and all the other digital evidence that is now showing up in our cases. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce John Markovic, Senior Policy Advisor for the Bureau of Justice Assistance, in charge of the Body-Worn Camera Policy Implementation Program.
Thanks, Damon, and thanks to CNA for pulling this together, and to the presenters for making time to present to us today. So just real quickly, this program began in 2015 as a grant program for law enforcement agencies. We recognized at the outset that the cooperation and coordination with prosecutors when planning for procuring body-worn cameras was a critical component. Frankly, some of the agencies who self-funded went ahead and bought the cameras, didn't consult with the prosecutors. It probably still occurs occasionally today, but as the body-worn camera ecosystem and has evolved, as people have gotten more experience with body-worn cameras and through things like assistance with our TTA provider, there's much better coordination. Yet we still know that prosecutors and police are dealing with this tsunami of digital evidence that's often overwhelming. So we're working with established agencies such as those on this call in exploring how they're meeting those challenges, solving those problems, and sharing those experiences so we can all improve the way that agencies are dealing with body-worn cameras, using it effectively, and really coming to grips with sometimes just tremendous amount of data and footage that they're confronted with when preparing for cases or making decisions on filing. With that, I'll turn it back over to Damon and the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So what we're going to do for the first half hour is have each of the agencies, each of the jurisdictions describe what and how they do certain things based upon certain questions. What I'd like to do is start with each of the prosecutors to introduce themselves. We're going to start with Andrew, talk about a little bit about who they are, how they got to where they are at, what their office size is, and what their overall jurisdiction looks like. And after we meet all three panelists, then we'll dive into exactly how they get their body-worn camera evidence, what and how they review it, and then how it's being used in a variety of manners. So I'd like to start with Andrew, please.
So my name's Andrew Ritland. I'm an elected prosecutor in Mahaska County, Iowa. It's a small jurisdiction, about an hour southeast of Des Moines. So our law enforcement agencies really consist of two in our county. We have the sheriff's office, which is the county-wide jurisdiction. And then we also have the local police department in our largest city. Just kind of get a sense of our size. The entire county is about 20,000 people. So we're on the smaller end, absolutely, of most jurisdictions in the country. But nevertheless, even with such a small force, we still generate a lot of video. I mean, we have probably 8-9 officers on duty at any one time, each running their cameras for the majority of their shifts, 24 hours a day. As with many of you, I'm sure, we just get a ton of video. So it can be a challenge to make sure that video is documented and categorized and saved as it should. But we've had body worn cameras in our jurisdiction for both agencies for approximately 5-6 years now. So it's something we've had for a while, and I think it's been a really asset to our jurisdiction.
And Andrew, how many prosecutors do you have that you supervise as the elected prosecuting?
Certainly. So I have 3 assistants. I handle the high level felonies. I have one that does the lower felonies, one that does misdemeanors, and one that does magistrate and kind of collections. And really, body worn cameras kind of touch each of those areas in a little bit different ways. Sometimes actually most helpful, frankly, in the lowest level offenses, because a lot of times officers don't write as detailed of reports. The stakes aren't quite as high, obviously, on those low level misdemeanors. So, body worn cameras can actually be pretty helpful in those areas because officers aren't, frankly, putting a ton of time into their report writing in some of those.
Thank you. Karen, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your Shelby District Attorney's Office, and then the nature of law enforcement there, how many agencies you have that submit reports and videos to you.
All right. Yeah, my name is Karen Cook. I'm in Memphis, Tennessee. I've been with the District Attorney General's office for 32 years. Been through, this is my 4th elected DA that I've dealt with. I'm currently a chief prosecutor of one of our major violator units that handles multiple repeat offender violent offenders, the rape, robbers, the murders. And I have a colleague, there's 2 divisions that do that right now. Our office, when it's fully staffed as far as attorneys, can have up to 120 ADAs at any given time. I supervise 6 or 7 of them. I've currently been put in charge of supervising our digital analyst group that tries to handle all this for all the attorneys. Shelby County is, close to 1 million, give or take 100,000, which I know in the election is a significant percentage, but we're close to 1 million. We have Memphis Police Department as our main client, so to speak. We have the Shelby County Sheriff's Department, and then we have some suburban jurisdictions, the Bartlett Police Department, Germantown, Carterville, and Millington, and as well as THP, Tennessee Highway Patrol. And so we now are getting video from every single one of these agencies. This office or this jurisdiction, we started getting videos in 2016. It was one of those situations that where our office found out that the Memphis Police Department had deployed body cameras by looking at the newspaper. When the commercial appeal came out and said, hey, and the MPD just deployed, I forget how many they were on the first deployment. That's the first time we knew about it. We'd heard that they were doing it. So that's been kind of a struggle. And since then, I've kind of been tangentially involved with the Memphis Police Department. And then as years have gone by, I'm the last one standing from the old guard from 6 or 7 years ago, and try to maintain that liaison with the Memphis Police Department. And the other jurisdictions have slowly rolled them out. We have Axon with MPD, Motorola with the Sheriff's Department, and Bartlett Police Department. And Axon is Germantown, THP, L3 in Carterville, and Utility. So we have a lot of different platforms that we have to keep up with. And of course, with MPD, we probably have, I think last time I checked, we have over 4 million assets that are currently, or close to 4 million that are currently in the Axon database.
Thank you, Karen. Turning to you, Amy, if you could tell us a little bit about what your role is at the Orange County District Attorney's Office and some biographical data about your jurisdiction related to law enforcement and the body-worn cameras.
Sure. I've been with the Orange County DA's office for 17 years. My felony prosecution experience is mainly in violent crime. I did gangs for a while, and then I did post-conviction homicide. After the pandemic, I got a little saturated with homicides, and they needed somebody to kind of supervise and take the lead on digital evidence management in the office, as well as our body-worn camera program. So they gave me that assignment, which I was happy to take. I do not carry a caseload right now, which is a huge difference, I think, probably with the other attorneys that are designated to this task. Orange County has, the last time I looked at the demographics in 2021, we're 3.1 million people. We have 28 major police agencies, of which we have 22 that are hooked up on body cams and 6 that are not. 1 is coming up, signing a contract in the next couple months. So we're almost completely saturated with body worn cameras in this jurisdiction. We in Orange County assign individual cameras to individual officers. So we have over 4,000 cameras operating in the county right now. We have 6,000 sworn officers at any given time. Other than that, we have about 300 attorneys here at the district attorney's office. I think a bit more when we're fully staffed, but that's where we're at right now. Anything else, Damon?
No, thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a handful of questions. I'm going to start with Andrew, if you could answer them, and then we'll walk through the same questions will apply. And then after we've talked about the body worn cameras and how you get the evidence, please, people, if you have questions, put it in the Q&A, because once we're done talking about all the various things that I'm going to direct, I want to hear your questions and get their answers for you for that. But we're going to ask how you get your body worn camera videos, which ones you review for purposes of making issuing decisions or preliminary examinations, motions, or trial, and then how you provide them in discovery and actual court use. So if you, and I'll refresh if we didn't get to all of them as you go. Go ahead, Andrew. Sorry. Compound
All right,
question.
thanks. I'm trying to remember all your questions at once. I was afraid I was going to miss all of them. So as far as obtaining the footage from the local police department, both jurisdictions, fortunately, have had a unified system called GTAC, GETAC, which you probably are familiar with. They have an ingest system. One jurisdiction allows us access to everything. So they don't have to market to give us access. We just have like the fire hose, so to speak. The other jurisdiction or agency has to approve or mark what videos they want to allow us to see. So as far as ingest is a little bit different. On the sheriff's office side, where we kind of drink from the fire hose, we have to go into their system and we will search for like incident numbers or case numbers, which they should be tagging, so we can find those videos. Oftentimes, we rely pretty heavily on the departments to properly put the metadata in. Obviously, we'll have date and time, but even with the date and time, incidents can, be investigated over multiple days. So it's hard for us to know what all video is associated with which incident. So we rely pretty heavily on them to properly tag and organize the footage. On the police department side, we rely on them to basically package all the videos that are connected with the case, and we just send it over to us. As far as the review process, typically, even though we're a small jurisdiction, it's I guess all in perspective, I don't review footage unless there is an issue. So unless there is a motion to suppress raised by defense counsel, or unless the officer's report is vague or not complete, I'll look at the footage there. But I just frankly don't have the time to review body-worn cameras on a regular basis unless I'm trying to solve a problem of some kind. In terms of distributing those to defense counsel, GTAC does have a kind of share functionality. So we can assign defense attorneys to access the same data pipe that we get on the prosecution side. However, we have not gone that route, mainly because I'm kind of fairly protective of our cases to make sure we have all the evidence in-house all the time. I think many of us can appreciate that, digital evidence can be lost very quickly and very often. So what happens on the discovery side, we'll actually download those assets to a local system called Videnex. It's a kind of online discovery platform. And we'll add the reports, the videos, everything into one package, and then share that package with defense counsel. The advantage of doing it this way is that even though GTAC says they're unlimited storage forever, at least we have a second backup on our systems that we can always access. And then eventually we'll put it into like an S3 instance, basically a long-term cheap storage through Amazon to keep it indefinitely. So that's kind of our intake, review, and kind of discovery process for body-worn cameras.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andrew. In terms of actual court usage and playing it in court, have you had an opportunity to do that, or given your jurisdiction, has cases not gone to trial with body-worn camera evidence?
Yeah, so we have. I typically will download the assets locally and then play them from a computer or a flash drive. You can, many systems do have the ability to have like a court presentation mode. But again, anything that can go wrong will go wrong in trial. So I like to have everything local. So I know there's no internet connection issues or things of that matter. So I always play them locally and then display them to the jury.
Thank you. Karen, if you could describe how at the Shelby District Attorney's Office, you get your body-worn cameras from the multiple agencies with different cameras and platforms, and then talk about, again, what gets reviewed for various portions of a case, and then the discovery aspect.
Absolutely. I mean, historically, we weren't getting too many of them. The Shelby County Sheriff's Department with Motorola WatchGuard, they wanted to download it, burn it to a disk. They didn't want us in there going in the back door so we could research it. And then there was too many requests, and they allowed us to go in the back door. Now we do have cloud share with WatchGuard or Motorola, and we're able to get it through there, and we're putting it in our evidence.com, which is the Memphis Police Department. Again, our major client with about 2,000 plus body cams, and they have Axon. So we have access to Axon, and we have the prosecutor side of Axon as well. We have some limited number of pro licenses that MPD has allowed us to have, which, you know, probably I'm sure Axon doesn't think that's best practices. And we go and we research cases as the ADAs are requesting them. And then we make a case. This is evolved over time. We're kind of getting a handle on most of it now. Most of it, we were just like, they were burning it to disk, a flash drive, putting it in the property and evidence room. But right now, we're putting it all over as much as we can into evidence.com on what we call the SCDAG side, Shelby County District Attorney General's side of Axon, where we're supposed to have unlimited storage unless it's a third-party upload. That's mostly what we're getting from Shelby County Sheriff's Department. Germantown also has Axon, and once they do their state reports, they case share it immediately over to our prosecutor side. Utility is not one of our favorites, and we don't get too much from Millington anyway. It's a very small jurisdiction with a couple of officers. THP also does case shares with over to this what we call SCDAG side of Axon. We've struggled a lot with MPD, unfortunately, trying to get them to understand that we're all on the same side because they didn't want us playing in their sandbox, so to speak. I guess they thought we could just sit there and watch these videos like Netflix or something, and we just simply don't have that kind of time at all. So as far as getting it to determining whether we're going to use it for charging decisions, trial, or anything like that, because of the vast volume, it kind of depends on the prosecutors. RDA would want us to review every single one of these videos before we actually indicted a case, because we have a general sessions level before it's indicted, and then it goes up to the criminal court level. And a lot of people will. It depends on kind of maybe I want to say the age of the prosecutor, but people in my who've been here for 30 years aren't as accepting of all this technology. And of course, the young ones who like were born with it, and it's really easy for them to get into it and know how to work through it, they're the ones who will look at it a lot more than some of us who have been here a lot longer. We do look at it when we're getting ready for trial because we have no choice. Now we have to see if we've got anything that is exculpatory or anything like that. And our trials are set out almost a year away, the backlog here. So we have plenty of time to look at it, except for the volume. We get our discovery to the defense bar right now, and hopefully our office is looking to get Axon Justice. And so, but right now, we push everything over into the SCDAG side, and we partner share or agency share with the public defender's office and the private defense bar. We do not do the redaction. We enter a protective order in court that the defense is not to allow their client to make notes, do anything like that upon viewing it, so that we don't have that time to redact it. It's the volume is ridiculous. So that's how the defense attorneys get their evidence through us. We're behind because we have 5 analysts to support 120 attorneys. I'm working through that with my new role as their supervisor. We certainly look at it when I know that Andrew had said if there's a problem with a motion to suppress or anything like that, we certainly do that as soon as we can. The defense attorney gives us a heads up and say, hey, my client says this, which we know the client is, self-serving statements, but we'll look at it and see if there's anything to it that makes us not want to charge it, or maybe the optics. There's nothing really legally wrong with what these officers did, but maybe the optics aren't something that you'd want to put in front of a jury in order to negotiate cases.
Karen, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. You mentioned something about 5 analysts.
Yes.
What is their role? Are they staff designed to handle the body camera videos, or what do they do?
They are staffed to, I say handle. They do all the research. They research the cases and all the platforms that we have. Our NetViewer, 911 calls, our RMS, our Watson, our Visions. They have all access to almost every single law enforcement database. Except for RMS, their MPD doesn't, most of them doesn't want us in an RMS, but we have access to almost every single platform. And when a prosecutor sends them the information, they'll start looking, they'll research it through the CAD number, the date and the time, sometimes even the officer, because, you'll see 100 officers on the scene and you're only seeing 5 body cams, when you look at that CAD number. And so they research all that. And at one time we were sending download links, but now we're making a case. So State versus Karen Cook would have an entire case that these analysts would put together with every single video that they were able to find, including MPD has GTEC for in-car videos. And then of course, Shelby County Sheriff's, they'll be making the arrest. So we have WatchGuard or Motorola. So they pull all that into one case and put it over on the prosecutor side.
In terms of actual court use, if you could briefly describe how your office handles the videos, what they do to play it or preserve it for the record.
What we do, similar to Andrew, we download it to a flash drive or a disk or something like that, because frequently we just want maybe 5 or 6 minutes of a particular 3-hour video. So we will, download it, show it to the defense, see if they have any problems with what was put in there and what they think ought to be put in there prior to doing that. And then we will show it, and that way it's preserved also for the Court of Appeals. We don't do it from the cloud, although it might be easier in some respects, but all of ours are downloaded to a flash drive or a disk in order to present it to a jury.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. Turning to you, Amy, let's talk about what you do here in California, in Orange County, California, with your 4,000 cameras and 6,000 sworn officers and 300 attorneys. Sounds daunting. Tell us how you get the body-worn camera video, what gets reviewed traditionally by your office, and then how you provide it in discovery and or use in court, please.
Sure. Our agency started getting body cams in 2014. So we've been doing this for a bit now. When we started the body-worn camera in the prosecution's office in 2015, we were very lucky that there was already an association in Orange County that had basically all of our criminal process stakeholders as members. So we sit in an association with the public defender's office, the courts, probation, all of the police agencies in Orange County. And it gives us an opportunity to have the stakeholders come together and discuss what is about to come up in the county for criminal justice. That gave us the opportunity to really collaborate with all of the different stakeholders on what we were going to do with this evidence that was really coming at us fairly quickly. We decided to purchase our own instance of evidence.com. Our first agencies were Axon. And in doing that, we actually collectively bargained and purchased an independent instance for the public defender's office as well. So we have for quite some time been accepting body worn camera footage through a digital share from the agencies, and then we digitally share that to the public defender's office. That has been a huge help to Orange County. When we intake a new case, we request that officers do not send us logged, what we would call a pre-filing or pre-decision case. We keep all of our evidence in our instance of evidence.com forever at this point, and we don't want pre-filing cases in there because in addition to all the filed cases, we don't want rejected cases in there. So if we're going to review a case, we're generally not watching the body worn camera video because we're going off paper still. There are some units that require pre-filing imagery and videos, like our sexual assault unit, where the conversations with children and whatnot and the suspects become very important to that filing decision. We get a lot of 148s, which are resisting police officers that we're gonna be wanting the videos for that to see exactly what happened. But for the most part, we don't review the videos at filing. When we do file, we have an electronic system with our court. Every case that we electronically file with the court, if the agency is identified as a body worn camera agency, the court also receives a protective order. Again, through that association, we were able to negotiate a basically standard protective order that the public defenders are willing to accept and the private defense bar were willing to accept. When we talked about this initially, we realized that there was no way for our 300 prosecutors to review the volume of video that we were getting. And on the other side of things, the public defenders wanted their video right away, which is, of course, a reasonable request. So understanding that we have obligations for Marsy's Law and protecting victims and witnesses and personal identifying information, which is very important in California, we all kind of understood that the only way that we were going to be able to get this into the public defender's hands right away was to sign a protective order that says basically, defense attorney, you can't show it to anybody, not even your client, until we have an opportunity to litigate this if need be. So here you go ahead and review it yourself. If you decide that that's something that you need to show your client eventually, then let us know. We will review it at that time and decide if there's any PII on it, personally identifying information on it, and litigate that for further protective order or lift the protective order if that's what's appropriate.
Not all of your agencies are on the evidence.com platform. You have agencies that have cameras from other vendors. How do you get videos from them and how do you discover those videos?
So we do have WatchGuard agencies, and another vendor called LensLock is trying to break into the Orange County market right now. For WatchGuard videos, we still get them on legacy media storage devices like flash drives and DVDs. Motorola WatchGuard, as most of you know, has not had a cloud-based sharing platform for us. Also in Orange County, we don't want access to the police agencies' systems. We want them to send us the evidence in a traditional way. We've never wanted access to their cloud environment. We've always wanted our own. So that's the way we do it right now. We don't upload that into our evidence.com environment, but we are changing that. We have developed some independent ingestion portals through creating separate instances of evidence.com that we pay for, where if we have non-Axon police agencies, they can upload their video into that system and transport it over to our evidence.com storage locker for free to the agency. So we do that a lot. And for private defense attorneys, we still provide legacy media storage for them as well. So we don't send download links. We've never been, because of the volume that we deal with, we have never been comfortable with download links, typos being what they are. We didn't want our download links going out into the web environment on people's Gmail, AOL, Yahoo, whatever they tend to have. These aren't the most secure platforms. So we still download it for the private bar, but we're about to pilot a different software through evidence.com that allows us to provide that in a digital fashion to them and give them a portal, an independent portal for them to view and store and download their digital evidence that way.
Amy, talking about how you actually end up using it in court or trial, whether it be for motions, preliminary examinations, or trials, what is the method that Orange County District Attorney's Office uses to bring that and entered into the record?
So we download it onto MP4. We generally find that the metadata is not necessary in trial. So we will generally download MP4s. Of course, we have to give it to the court to store as evidence. I agree with Andrew, anything that can go wrong will go wrong in trial. So we want it on disk or flash drive immediately prior to going to court. Because we're so large, we do train every single officer before they hook up their body camera. And we train them on court process and what these body cameras look like in court, as well as the ethical use of these cameras. I personally do a lot of that training. And so I tell the officers our experience with that. It's always best if the officer is talking to the video as they're using the video. That's an extremely helpful tool in court. So if an officer needs to turn off his camera so he can discuss next investigation steps with his colleagues, or if he's got HIPAA information that's going to actually start to happen, he can tell his camera, I'm going to turn you off for a second while I talk to my colleague. And it really helps the jury understand what's going on. If he's arresting for a DUI and he smells alcohol at the hip of the vehicle, we ask the officers to call that out if it's safe during their investigation, so the jury knows exactly what's going on in that body camera. And we teach the officers that this is a training tool for the jurors. And while you can come in and tell us that you smelled alcohol at the hip of that vehicle on the stand, if you're calling it out during the investigation, it's much more useful for us. We can just play the video and we have an entire teaching tool in court that we can use. Lots of tricks and trades, though, that we've learned over the years. Jurors don't quite understand what would be extremely obvious if you really sat down and thought about it. Body cams don't capture everything, of course. And these are obvious things, but in the, I guess in the excitement of being a juror or in the excitement of trial, they forget these very common sense things that an officer can hear and perceive things behind them or to the side of them. And so you really have to have kind of a small, like half an hour lesson on the capability of body camera so that they don't have expectations that are too high, that the crime is going to be captured on the body cam or the smoking gun is going to be in that video, because it almost never is.
Fantastic. Thank you. So let's, for all three of you, and in no particular order, but let's talk about, all your other digital evidence and what you do with it, how you manage it, either discovery or storage are the two biggest aspects I can think of. We've talked extensively about body cameras and the platforms. Are you using those same platforms, or do you have different platforms that you use for that, because it's different type of media that's coming in? And I'll just randomly say, Karen, you're up.
Our other digital evidence, again, we're trying to get Axon Justice where we can just load every piece of digital evidence onto that cloud where it has every single kind of player you could possibly imagine. But the other evidence, either it's tagged by the police agency as evidence and we pull it out, we burn copies for defense. We have a case management system right now called Justware, and we're able to put quite a bit of information in there. Of course, we're running out of storage on that case management, but we've had problems of getting it back out of that case management system as well. I have no idea what happened with that. It was just one particular agency, but we try to put as much as we can, because our biggest, of course, client is MPD, as much as we can into the cloud share on the SCADAG side of Axon and whatever else we can. But it's mostly tagged as either a disk or a flash drive, or we can load it into our case management system. But we'd still have to take it out of our case management system to put it on a flash drive to bring it to court to present to a jury anyway.
Fantastic. Thank you. Turning to Andrew, you had mentioned you have a platform that, because you don't have the others.com. What do you do, or how do you manage all your evidence that you have?
Certainly. So probably about a year and a half ago, we were kind of a pilot county for Vidanyx, VIDANYX. It's a kind of a new platform out of Nebraska. It really provides us kind of a unified approach for evidence. So all the reports, videos, body-worn cameras, lab results, everything goes into this online platform, which we then can share out links. So for example, if we have other agencies involved, other investigators, maybe state investigators, things like that, we'll send out links so they can add information directly into their system. So we don't have to, they don't have to send us to a flash drive and we upload it on their behalf. They can just do it directly. Also, it's very helpful when we have like say a victim or a witness has a screenshot on their phone of a snap or something. We can send them a link and they'll upload it directly into the system. So it's all kind of preserved. So kind of eliminating the people who touch kind of the evidence. So once it's in that system, we can also send out links to defense counsel in a limited capacity so they can see some or typically all of what we have in that system. Eventually, we can then archive it and then migrate that to a long-term data storage kind of solution. So it worked out pretty well for us. We have probably 20, 30 local attorneys who've kind of now been trained in that system and accessing and things like that. We still have somewhat of a challenge with cell phone data dumps because those are, 200 gigs plus. So those are still a challenge, which maybe technology will get to a point where we can easily upload and compress those things. But other than cell phone dumps, it works pretty well for us.
Fantastic. And then Amy, I'll ask you the same question with respect to your overall digital evidence management, then we'll start fielding some of the questions.
We don't allow PDFs into our evidence.com environment. Evidence.com is our main digital evidence management system. And we do accept all sorts of things into that, except for PDFs. We have an ecosystem that we built between the agencies, the DA's office, and the courts that supports a PDF transfer. So the agencies put in their police reports on their end. Those are electronically transferred into our CMS, where a case is created. And then if we decide to file that case, all of that digital evidence, or I'm sorry, digital information in those fields go over to the court so that they can start their process of getting the criminal case started. For that reason, we don't allow any PDFs to go into evidence.com. That's just a hard stop. Occasionally it happens, but that's kind of my job, is to police that situation. Not so much because I don't want it in there, it's just we need to continue to support the court's ecosystem. Through that same PDF portal, we can accept small videos and pictures, and if they do come through there, we will store them in our own case management system. We're currently in the process of migrating all of our relational databases and our backend databases up into a cloud environment. So we're not going to have on-site servers here in the next 2 or 3 years at all. I guess, and attached to that system, we can push out all of those PDFs to the attorneys, the defense attorneys on the other side. The public defenders is actually in that ecosystem. So at arraignment, we can share the PDFs and anything else that's in that CMS environment with the public defenders. We built a back-end transfer. So if the public defender's office accepts the case, accepts the appointment, in the evenings, all of those documents go into their system and populate their case management system on their side. And also we have a portal that defense attorneys can log into at arraignment and download those initial police reports if they would like to. To be honest, most of the private attorneys don't use that. It's only available to them at arraignment right now as we kind of build up the system and make sure that our county infrastructure and the bandwidth here can handle all of that volume. We're only allowing it at arraignment right now, but that should expand. Other than that, we have evidence.com. For years and years, we weren't allowed to upload any foreign data into that environment without paying for it. So if it didn't come from the police agency directly, and we uploaded it ourselves in the DA's office, we would have to pay for storage. But if the officers or the police agencies uploaded it on their end and we received it through evidence.com, the storage was free to us. There are some agencies that send all of their digital evidence through evidence.com, regardless of where it originated. So even if it was off their own digital camera, they'll send those photographs to us. There are other agencies that have a contract with Axon that doesn't allow them to upload foreign digital evidence into their environment without paying for it. And they will still give those over to us in legacy media. But like I mentioned before, we're about to open up portals to those agencies that don't have the larger contracts so that they can start uploading all of that stuff into an evidence.com portal on their end and transferring it to us. And then for whatever loopholes, Axon was fine saying that that still qualifies as free storage to you because they're using the portal that we pay for on that side. It's probably just another hook to get everybody to buy into their ecosystem. But that's basically how we do it right now.
Okay, thank you. So we have a couple questions. One, Amy and I chatted on this during the webinar, but does Amy have her training materials that we can share with our police departments? And Amy has graciously said that she does have a PowerPoint. What we'll do is we'll end up posting it and letting the attendees know where it's at. And that's something Quinn will do, but that resource will be available because I think it's a fantastic idea to train your law enforcement officers to hopefully get better results in their taping that we can use in court as opposed to just statically recording and not necessarily thinking of it for evidentiary value. So thank you very much, Amy, and thank you to Orange County District Attorney's Office. That's a tremendous resource. Here's a question for everybody on the panel. How much extra administrative resources or time does it take to download the evidence into separate systems and discover from there? And do you think it's worth it? So I'm going to start with Karen on this one, because you do have staff that are doing this and helping you with all the different things, but your office decided to expend resources to handle the various evidence that comes to your office, not just body camera, but other evidence. Is that correct?
It started out, our digital analyst started out with just doing the body cam evidence. But as things have progressed, they do take in more other types of digital evidence to put in to the case that we're making. We don't have enough resources. There aren't enough digital analysts to make these cases, to get them to the attorneys quickly enough to get to the defense for discovery. I've already gotten an email about a judge being antsy because we haven't gotten a case to somebody in a 3-week period. And that's because there's 20 people ahead of them. And we prioritize it with in custody versus out of custody and that kind of thing. I think it is worth having a staff that can help you do that. And certainly they also attempt to do any of our any of our redactions. If we have to do redactions, blur some kid's face. And that's, we do third-party redaction with it. So that makes it a little more complicated. But they do help with trial prep. And we have one particular one that does all the trial prep for us to make sure that what is going to go wrong, we at least have somebody there to catch the ADAs when they fall, because I think we all know what that's like to stand there and sweat bullets. I don't know if that answered the question or not, but.
The same question to Andrew. I think with your size office, that's probably not likely that there's extra resources being used for that, but go ahead.
Yes, that would be correct. So we have 2 office staff kind of full-time to support 4 attorneys. And while one does focus on trying to collect evidence from the various jurisdictions, we don't have a lot of extra administrative capacity. So some of this does fall on the attorney. Just in our jurisdiction, kind of all hands on deck sort of idea. So particularly for trials, we do redactions, things like that. Usually the attorneys will do their own redactions, which we can do through Vidinix or through kind of other tools. And a part of it is it's just really kind of good communication, because a lot of times we're small enough where we'll kind of know what's out there typically in a case. Like we've talked to the officers, we'll kind of know, what pieces might be missing from our evidence bucket. So we just are in pretty good communication with telling our law enforcement agencies, hey, officer so-and-so, make sure you send us this piece of evidence, because our office staff won't have always the time or ability to go out and proactively search. So it does fall more on the attorneys to kind of shoulder some of the administrative burden. But on the other hand, we're typically pretty well equipped with the cases and pretty familiar with the facts, because we've, are in these cases pretty often. So it does kind of help there on the trial preparation front.
Okay. And then Amy, from hearing what you've been talking about, because you do have agencies with multiple platforms, but you as an office have decided to expend certain financial resources to make it so it's centralized for yourself. But are there staffs associated with that, support staff? I mean, you're a dedicated attorney to that, which is a dedicated resource for the office. What else has been put aside for this type of thing, and is it worthwhile?
So I will say that because we're such a large agency, but also because we have that integrated law and justice association, we explained to the police officers from the very beginning that we did not have the ability to absorb the download responsibility on these body cams. So they could digitally transfer it to us in evidence.com, but we will not accept Motorola Judicial Share because that puts a burden on us to download that and then upload it back into our evidence.com. We don't really have the bandwidth to do that for 6 agencies, and we certainly don't have the staff and time. Those videos are gigantic. So we're very lucky our elected DA put his foot down and said, we are simply not absorbing that. You guys will have to figure it out. That being said, we had to hire traditionally, we did not have paralegals in our office. We had them, a small amount of them for our vertical units, homicide and sexual assault, et cetera. But we didn't really, we had one per branch court, maybe. And they did things like background running and things like that. But we hired a slew of paralegals that understand more of the legal requirements in this digital evidence push to the defense. So that was a huge expense that we had to incur. We had to form a designated body-worn camera group. So we've always had an attorney in this group. Most of the time they have a half caseload. This is the first time when I started this in 2015 and I had a caseload. I went out of it for a bit and came back. This is the first attorney in Orange County that hasn't had a caseload and is completely designated to this. And I'll tell you that that's happening in Orange County, or obviously, but also it's happening in all of Southern California. I'm a member of a group of prosecutors that get together about semi-annually to discuss all of these matters, and all of the large agencies are starting to designate not only legal staff, but technical support and support staff to a body-worn camera specific group to handle all of this. So it does take an extreme amount of resources. On the flip side, if you can get your program working very well, it saves you a lot of time and energy. So we have an automatic transfer to the public defenders. We don't download anything for them. They get their PDFs through accepting appointment in our system, and they get all of their digital evidence for the most part through evidence.com. Of course, we have 6 agencies that they still get it on storage on the CDs and flash drives, but so there's a huge cost savings to our county through that. As we all know, as prosecutors, the quicker that discovery exchange occurs, the quicker that the case resolves. So it's a lot of upfront money. There's no doubt about that. But I just had meetings with our board of supervisors over the last 3 days to explain to them the importance of this. And really, when you get your money people in the room, your decision makers in the room, and explain to them the system, how complex it is, how dangerous it can be if you're not constantly monitoring and cleaning that data up as it comes over, tagging it correctly, making sure that the numbers are not typoed. Once the decision makers are in the room, it's pretty easy to explain to them why there needs to be designated funds towards digital evidence management.
Thank you, Amy. So we have a couple more questions, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the question, and I think I know the answer sufficiently, but if the panelists disagree with me or want to enhance my answer, I welcome that opportunity for you. So one is, we use myevidence.com to digitally share with our non-partner agencies or the public. Is that the product you were alluding to for a digital share, or is another product you were looking into? And my answer is that for many prosecutors, it is what they're using to share with the public or share with other entities. But there are other evidence platforms. I think Andrew alluded to one that he's working with. I know that Orange County is looking to put it all through evidence.com, but I don't think there's any one set answer for digitally sharing. It's going to depend upon the jurisdiction of how you're receiving it and what you already have in place. I see some. Go ahead, Erin.
Absolutely, Damon. And while we're on the subject of myevidence.com, of course, San Diego and Orange County approached this issue very differently. Myevidence.com right now, if you allow a defense attorney into that environment, you will be able to see their audit trail and basically everything that they've done with that evidence, how many times they viewed it, which portions of the video they viewed it. In San Diego, I know they decided just to turn audit trails off. They decided that that wasn't going to be, primarily wasn't going to be discoverable. It wasn't something they were going to exchange. They just kind of agreed to that as a county. In Orange County, we decided that that was absolutely discovery, and I think we're pretty unique in that. So we never wanted our defense attorneys in that environment because we would see everything they were doing, because we don't turn off audit trails, and that obviously is an unacceptable solution. So the software that we're looking at is Justice Premier through Axon, which separates those audit trails so that we can't see the defense audit trail.
Fantastic. The next question is, do you or your staff review the body worn camera footage before sending out discovery to make sure that the footage goes with the case, or are you relying on the police department tagging the footage, labeling it with the correct case number? And I can say probably across the board from what I've heard, if we're not viewing it prior to making an issuing decision, we're not viewing it prior to discovering it. So we're not viewing it to verify that the case number matches in what they wrote for the report matches what they wrote on the tag for the video. And a lot of the tagging is becoming more automatic. And if it mismatched, the odds of it hitting an exact case are pretty slim too. But any input from any of the agencies? But I think the answer is no. They don't double check that the video is labeled correctly with the correct case number.
And our digital analysts attempt, when they're looking at the videos for however many 30 seconds to see if the cat is right, they will often see that there's a traffic stop that got fat fingered. So we don't rely on MPD to give us any of our evidence because they don't understand that this is evidence at all, unfortunately. So we try to pull out anything that is obviously not part of that case before we send it over. Not that we're 100% successful, but we try to make sure that there's something that's not relevant, not going over.
So I think in terms of that question, one of the things that, in order not to have to do that is to work on the training aspect at the front end, letting law enforcement know why it's important it's done this way, and that they could actually be at risk because we're not going to be viewing it all ahead of time. Like I said, Amy graciously has agreed to provide some of her PowerPoints on this issue, and that may be something we all take back as prosecutors to our police agencies and start a program of getting them trained, which will alleviate some of our headaches in the recordings.
And Damon, we do have our paralegals do our first digital clean on that. So we have a lot of CAD integration with the systems in Orange County. But when our paralegals received that evidence and started to build the case on our side, they do a lot of digital cleaning right there. So if they notice a video that's kind of out of line or has the wrong DR number, even though it was shared to us in the case, they will start doing that initial data clean. We might still get discovery that wasn't relevant in the case, but we do our best to clean that through our paralegals and then clean it up again later, if we're looking at it for trial.
Fantastic. But by then the discovery would have gone out.
Yeah, it would have gone out by then. We have a really good relationship with the public defender's office again. So if I call their tech department up and I say, hey, we transferred some video to you that isn't relevant to that case, they'll lock it down on their end. Or if we call up and say, hey, we shared evidence with you and the protective order didn't get signed, they'll lock it down on their end until we have a chance to review the issue with the defense attorney and litigate it if necessary. We have a really good relation. The tech departments have a really good relationship, not always the attorneys, but the tech departments.
Got it. Thank you, Amy. Do we have any other questions? Any other questions in general or for specific panelists or related to either body-worn cameras? I'll give it a minute, but if not, in the meantime, if people are still formulating questions, I do want to thank all three panelists. I think we've learned a lot today. We have Andrew's jurisdiction with 4 attorneys, all the way up to Amy's with over 300 attorneys, and somewhere in between is Karen's. You can see all the different issues that come up. Some are similar, but some are unique in terms of the jurisdiction and the relationship you have with law enforcement. I think it's important that we have those dialogues as often as we can with respect to training them I also took away from listening to this that it certainly helps to have a good relationship with your defense bar if at all possible. They bear some of the same burdens that we bear with this voluminous evidence and voluminous amount of videos. And if we can have a dialogue, perhaps we can engage in protective orders or engage in the ability to retrieve videos, or at least civilly interact on these types of cases, because it's not going to improve things if we're not doing that. And with that, again, I thank you. I thank Andrew for taking your time out as the elected prosecuting attorney. I think that's fantastic. Thank you, Amy and Karen, for continuing to work with us at CNA and help out. I don't know if John has any final closing thoughts he would like to share with us.
I think you
Okay.
captured it well, Damon. We started out is that, there's just an expression called the 5 V's, and I always forget what all 5 are, but 4 of them are volume, velocity, variety, and veracity. So, basically you're dealing with the tsunami of data, doing the best you can, learning as you go, refining processes, in many instances taking advantage of technology that the vendors are offering, and streamlining the processes. Amy pointed out well, investing that time up front in developing the processes and cleaning the data that eventually pays dividends as you're dealing with data in a more efficient manner, a cost-effective manner, and a smoother manner for what we're all after is the decision making to support pushing cases forward and presenting evidence in the cases. So very well done. I think we've all learned a lot from these real world experiences.
Thank you, John, and thank you all the participants, all the attendees. We appreciate your time today, and we hope this has been some value. At the very least, take away knowing that we have a toolkit for you, and there'll be new materials put there on a daily basis. So please, thank you, and have a great day.